do like hairy men, it's true. I also like the idea of a future where we're all Iron Men. I can deal with that. And to that end, I am actually writing a book about the future. You know, what I'm talking about here today to you and to some people that I've already met is basically how I live and how I operate in the world. And I'm writing a book about the future where I've gone around and I've talked to a bunch of rock star scientists and CEOs and thinkers about what the world is going to look like in 5 years. I interviewed IBM's top scientist about that, and you know, the article got a lot of attention, and I thought, oh, how would other people answer that? What will our world look like? One of them was David Eagleman, and he is an amazing neuroscientist that you should look up, who's looking at how humans can develop new senses, which is a little bit like that Iron Man thing. But the fundamental tenets of what everyone that I talked to were saying were not really about technology at all. They were about who we are as humans, our creativity, our curiosity, our connections with each other, and how we can be supported by technology in being kinder and better humans. So that's really what I'm talking about to you and with you today. About, you know, seeing the future is really about shaping the future. This is a quote that I really like by Neil Donald Walsh. He's kind of look him up, he's kind of a hippie, but Oprah really likes him. So it says, quantum physics tells us that nothing observed is unaffected by the observer. That statement from science holds a powerful insight, and it's true. You're not, in order to see the future, you're actually the person shaping the future. You have a real effect on how things turn out. And there are two futures that we can live into. We can live into the dystopian version, or we can live into the we are all positive polymaths version, and it's really my mission in the world for it to be the latter, for us to shape it positively. So how do you do that? There are 3 ways. For the purposes of our talk, and because we have 20 minutes today, I'm collapsing it into 2. But the first one is be curious, like an ethnographer or a 5-year-old. And all of my ethnographer friends would be aghast that I actually said this. But I think of them as essentially the same thing. And I'll tell you more about that. Number 2 is envision the future that you want to live into, and in an extremely powerful, detailed, specific way, and then take action toward that. And 3, it's follow your intuition and don't be afraid to do so. And I'll give you some examples. I promised examples from semiotics and from my life about that. And there are some really powerful thinkers who have dared to follow their visions in ways that I am blown away by, and I want to share with you. So to see like an ethnographer or a 5-year-old, this is a great quote. How many people know Richard Feynman? I figure in this audience, a lot of people will. Physicist, brilliant, wonderful. I'm such a geek. I dig this quote. And it's, nobody ever figures out what life is all about, and it doesn't matter. Explore the world, because nearly everything is really interesting if you go into it deeply enough. And that's, you know, sort of a simple statement and the crux of what it is to be an ethnographer, an explorer of the world, a 5-year-old, to recognize that you're not going to figure it out. There is no right answer, but that you yourself have a beautiful and unique perspective on what the world is and can be, and you're a contribution everywhere you go. Like, really let that sink in for a minute. Your voice and your ideas are really important, and I keep discovering that in my own life. I'll say something that seems serendipitous to a stranger I've just met on the street, and they'll say, that was exactly the thing that I needed to hear right now. It happened last night at the Montreal Geek Girls event. It's interesting, but when you let yourself open up and let that stuff come out, you'll find that you're actually changing the world and changing people's lives. And in order to do that well and effectively, you have to clear out your own garbage and know how it is that you see in the world. And recognize your own biases. So this is a really fun semiotics game that I like, and I want to do with you. So it's the colored shirt game. right there, I'm purposely not saying your name, but will you please stand up for us? The gentleman right there in the brightly colored shirt that I'm pointing out with the clicker. No, up 2 rows in front of you. Keep going, up, forward, 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 forward. No, not backward, toward the room, toward the stage, that one. Have him stand up. Yes, please. Hello, and thank you for letting me pick on you. Okay, everyone, what colored shirt is he wearing? Please just call out some answers. Puce, orange, mustard, yellow. What else? Mango. Grape? Bright. Excellent. Thank you, sir. Okay, and the point that that illustrates is, look, we're all looking at the exact same set of stimulus. We're looking at this guy smiling at us wearing an amazing shirt, and we all see it differently. We give it a different name, and we think we're seeing the same thing, right? Did you think, like, I know what color that is. Do you? And do you see the world the same way as everyone else? No, you don't. You have your unique perspective, but it's knowing how you see and what your biases are and recognizing that everyone's perspective is different and is valid. I like that one. That's fun. Do that to illustrate the point in meetings. It's great. Another way to be an explorer of the world and an ethnographer or like a 5-year-old is to be curious about everything. I learned so much from my daughter. She asked me questions like, Mommy, is the inside of your mouth as hot as fire? Or, Mom, who were the first people after the dinosaurs? And I love that she challenges me with these questions all the time because they're so bizarre. And they're also wonderful because I get to think about the world differently and see it in a different way. And because of her, I collect all sorts of things. My pockets are always full of rocks, and my bags are always full of beads and Cheerios, and you kind of never know what will show up. My bag's like the room of requirement. But that's because I've adopted this way of living that's very much like the way she lives. She collects everything. And I'm not the only one. This is a really wonderful TED Talk, if you get a chance to watch it. The gentleman, his name is Randall Patrick Monroe, and he has an online webcomic where he answers what-if questions. He did this wonderful one, and it was, I hope I get this right, it's about the amount of data that Google collects in a year and how many punch cards that would fill. But he just randomly came up with the question and started using math and physics and logic to see if he could answer the question. And Google got back in touch with him with a reply about whether he was right in his guess, but they encrypted it. So in order to get their reply, he had to break the code. And in the end, the reply was, no comment. But ask what-if questions, wander around, be silly, and do exactly as he recommends. This quote is fantastic. I'm going to read it to you verbatim because I like it so much. Take wrong turns. Talk to strangers. Open unmarked doors. And if you see a group of people in a field, go find out what they're doing. Do things without always knowing how they'll turn out. And I don't think this is true of this group, except that you're curious, but you are curious and smart and bored, and all you see is the choice between working hard and slacking off. And there are so many adventures that you miss because you're waiting to think of a plan. To find them, look for tiny, interesting choices. And remember that you're always making up the future as you go, right? It's true. My life has been shaped by following all sorts of tiny random choices. I went to a school in East Texas where people would draw maps to parties in fields that didn't exist and with parties that weren't actually happening because it was a religious school. I went there for a while. I've wandered around the world doing unusual things because I just say yes to almost anything that people invite me to do. And, right? Yeah? It's a way to be, and it's led me into some weird spots, but also my life keeps getting bigger as a result of it. I MC for South by Southwest. I write stories. I modeled in New York Fashion Week last year. I do the things because I say yes to them, and I recognize that I can. I recognize that I can, and that everyone in here has that same capacity. We're all polymaths. You are not just your job. You are not just your feelings. You're not just your attitudes or ideas. You're huge, and you can do all sorts of things. Walt Whitman knew it. I am large. I contain multitudes. And these people knew it too. Does anyone know who this is? Aside from the geek girls who heard it last night? Okay. This is Margaret Hamilton. In 1969, when humanity first stepped foot on the moon in the Apollo mission, Margaret Hamilton is the one who made that happen. She's standing next to a big old pile of papers, and the picture, I cut it off, but it actually goes down all the way to here. And what she's standing beside is the code that she wrote by hand in order to make that mission possible. By hand, she wrote the code, and she had actually taught herself to program. Believe in your vision. Does anyone know who this is? Raise your hand, stand up, shout it out. Who is it? She created wireless technology. Absolutely right. Ding, 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 ding. This is Hedy Lamarr. But not only did she create wireless technology, in the 1930s and 40s, she was a Hollywood starlet. She was a film star known as one of the most beautiful women in the world. She would sing, she would act, and oh, by the way, she was a fabulous mathematician who created a spread spectrum that's still used to power Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Believe in your vision. And this one is one of my favorites, and most people don't know about her or talk about her, and I love her. This is Madam C.J. Walker. She was born a slave, and she became the first American black woman millionaire in 1905 for creating a line of hair products. And I love so many things about her, but I'm going to read you a quote that Madam C.J. Walker said. I'm not ignoring you and tweeting things out right now. She said, "I'm a woman that came from the cotton fields of the South. I was promoted from there to the wash tub. Then I was promoted to the cook kitchen. And from there, I promoted myself to the business of manufacturing goods and hair preparations. Everybody told me I was making a mistake by going into this business. But I know how to grow hair as well as I know how to grow cotton." Did you get the key part of that? She promoted herself. Lots of people told her she was crazy. No one had ever done it before. And that's exactly what so many of you as entrepreneurs are doing, right? Sometimes people don't believe in you. Sometimes you don't even believe in what it is that you're doing. But you should, because you were called to do the thing that you are doing now, because there's a little voice inside of you that told you you're supposed to do it, right? You know, sometimes all the questions or the doubts or the fears get in the way of hearing that voice, but it's that voice that got you to start doing what you're doing, and that's the most important thing to listen to. Don't sit down and wait for opportunities to come. Get up and make them, and you did, and you are. And what that's required and continues to require of you is getting still and getting really quiet and listening to that voice. I did that once upon a time. 2 years ago, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I'd never been hiking before. I'd never been hiking when I climbed Kilimanjaro. I'd walked around San Francisco in my hiking boots. I had this periodically I'll do this check-in with the universe, and I'll be like, whatever it is that you've got for me, I accept. Now be careful when you say that. I got pregnant once when I said that, so be careful when you say that. I didn't expect it. But in this case, I was like, what's next? And the answer that came back was Africa. I was like, okay. I didn't have any plans to go to Africa, but okay. And a couple days later, I was talking to a friend, and she's like, hey, I have family in Tanzania. I'm like, ooh. Okay, Tanzania, great, I'm going to Tanzania. And then I was like, what's in Tanzania? I know Off-Grid Electric is doing some really amazing things with energy credits and usage. You should look them up in terms of startups that are doing mind-blowing things in the world. They are, but I was like, okay, great. Kilimanjaro is in Tanzania. So I posted on Facebook, I'm going to Kilimanjaro. And do you know how all my friends read that? I'm climbing Kilimanjaro. And I was like, fuck. Okay, so I'm climbing a mountain. And I did, because I could. And the only lesson, you know, sometimes you get these intuitive calls and you're not quite sure where that's going to lead or why. I made a lot of amazing connections. I ended up climbing with these women, raising money for a rhino sanctuary in the shadow of the mountain, which was great. I did something good for the world. I also learned I made some amazing connections. These women are connected with the Ideas Fest in Aspen and are connecting me in there. So it's led to that. And it showed me that I can do anything that I want to do. And maybe that was the ultimate and most important lesson of it. I don't always have to know the why. I don't always get to know the why. But I do know, without a doubt, that when I listen to the small voice inside, things go especially well. I believe in the vision. And Einstein, okay, this is one of those don't believe everything you read on the internet moments. This is not a real Einstein quote, by the way. I did the research to make sure. I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, I had to make sure. It's not. It's a paraphrase of someone that was a biographer of his, but he said something pretty close, and I love the quote regardless. It said, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honors the servant, but has forgotten the gift." Truth. And you guys know Google, the idea for Google originally came to Larry Page in a dream when he was 23, and he said, I got, in a Forbes article from April 9th, 2012, he said, I got up in the middle of that night and I scribbled down the idea and I spent the rest of the night convincing myself that it was actually possible. Intuitive mind. So, if you walk away from here with only two things, these are the tweetable moment, these are your two things, right? One, you actually create the future. Every thought you have, every conversation you have, every idea you have, every intuitive sense that you have, and every way that you share that with other people, it changes what our world becomes. You have the ultimate creative power to change our world. You do it. That's you. And two, you're huge and totally limitless, and you can be Hedy Lamarr if you want. The dudes in here with beards, I don't know about that, but you can dance and you can write and you can build technology and you can climb mountains and you can raise a child, and you don't have to ever choose either or. You can choose all of those things because you totally can, and you've got this. Thank you for dreaming big and believing your future self.